Hello, future millionaires, and welcome back to the Get Rich Slow podcast. Today, I'm Adrian Schermer, as you all know, and my co-host Rob Delavan is here with me.
Good morning.
And we are joined today by Jenn Orr, owner of Studio Red Design and the director for the Delavan Contracting Services. Hey, Jenn.
Good morning.
Good morning. How long, Jen, just to ask you a couple more questions, how long have you been in the design world?
I have been in design for about 5 years now.
And I believe you are a esteemed alumni of Seattle Pacific University with a bachelor's in design. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure the associated student loan debt to go with it, like everybody else that went to private school.
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
We love it. Thank you for being our guest today. We have done a number of, we recently did an episode on just a total design fail for a client. And it was one of these things where they put different kinds of floors in, they spent good money on floors and just did it wrong. Like one was laminate, one was really nice hardwood that was originally there. And just all of these, like, people don't know what they don't know, and they literally spend thousands of dollars to make things not better. And it's amazing. So it was like, we have to have Jenn as our guest on our podcast because she makes sure that these things don't happen. And there's this concept that interior designers are expensive or only for wealthy people, or the housewives of, I don't know, fill in the blank, in Orange County and whatever. Like,
it seems a luxury item for sure.
They pay for designers to be their friend that they go shopping with, right?
Yeah.
That's not the real world, but we still have to deal with that. So tell us a little bit about just kind of a typical approach. Give us like the Reader's Digest of what you do, when I throw a messed up house at you. And then we'll just unpack this. And at the end of this 20-30 minute episode, I want the audience to be able to have a grasp of what a interior designer really does, why you're so valuable. And frankly, at the end of the day, it's way cheaper to have somebody that has the big picture vision and a plan and make sure we don't make incredibly expensive mistakes.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So I throw you a piece of junk.
Yeah.
Ready, go.
Well, first of all, I love the piece of junk. So we'll start there. So when it comes to remodels, I would say 90% of my job as an interior designer is actually project management. And so there is a small portion that, yes, consists of the design aesthetic, but there's so much involved in bringing all the pieces together that homeowners don't realize or understand. So when you bring me a house that needs a lot of work done to it, it's first breaking down all the things that need to be done, right? And figuring out where is it worth putting money into? So what elements of this house is it going to be profitable for us to put money into? And what areas just really don't matter? So that's the first step, is figuring that out. And then second, we go into, okay, who can we bring in? So this is where the project management piece comes in. Who can we bring in to take care of all these items at the most reasonable price, that's going to do good work and get the job done? And so one thing, when you're hiring an interior designer, you're also hiring all the laborers and contractors that are going to come in and do this work. So you're hiring a team of people that have already been vetted, You already know that they do good work. You already know that their price point is a good price point.
Right.
And all of
Reasonable.
that, yeah, all of that research and education is already been done for you. So you don't have to worry about, who's coming in to do the work and all of that.
Okay, let me interrupt you because I want to back up to step one first.
Okay.
Step one literally looks like, and I know this just because, frankly, Jenn is always lining these things out, and she's saying, "Oh, I'd love to do all of these things," but the response always becomes, "We know roughly how much things are going to cost." Jenn really knows with her skill set. And from a real estate standpoint, and we're making this assumption that this is to get a house ready for sale to maximize the value at some point. It doesn't mean we're selling it tomorrow. It could mean we're selling it 10 years from now, but we're trying not to do work multiple times in a row and waste money that way.
Right.
So, which is resources, which is finite. And that's the whole point of building wealth is you want to be smart with the resources that you have. So usually I'll end up with, after Jenn and I and other members of the team walk through, we end up with basically a laid out, it usually ends up being an email because we're dealing with a client that says, these are the things you have to do. These are the things we recommend you do. And these are the things that would be great, but probably aren't going to pay themselves back or are going to be less important, or they're going to be something that maybe a buyer would want to do themselves, to customize and so on. And what ends up usually happening is if you did everything all the way down to the third one, that's that design that, goes on the cover of HGTV, Chip and Joanna Gaines, monthly magazine, right? Like
for frills.
Crazy, beautiful, just incredible, like top dollar, but almost to the point it gets ridiculous. Like nobody lives that way. And you start putting in $1 in and you only get 50 cents or maybe 25 cents out. But the basics that we say you have to do are obviously things like roof and, like making sure that the building envelope is not rotting away, right? We don't want water inside. We keep the water outside. But is things like, flooring and paint and the cheaper things that you can do, but still you get, a couple bucks out. Like, hey, let's change out. Maybe we're not going to change out the cabinets, but we're going to paint them and do new door pulls or handles or, so like it's have to do because you're going to get $2 out of it of value for every dollar you put in. Probably should do because you're going to get maybe up to maybe a little more than $1 out for every dollar in. And then the third level is, are we going to make this so spectacular that yes, it might sell for top dollar, but it's going to take 6 months and you're probably not going to get the dollars out.
Marketability.
And the beauty of that is since we work together on this, Jenn, you will tell me, no, I disagree. And that's when we have our best conversations, or you should really consider,
the kind way to disagree. Have you considered that you're wrong?
I'm wrong a lot. But that's the point is we work closely enough together that we can do that. And the idea is we want to make sure that the mistakes are made on our side. Not, for example, Jenn's working on a house of mine right now. And it's, I don't know. Are you ready to fire me yet, Jenn? What do you think about that project?
No, it's fun. It's good. I've got contractors working there right now, but yes, it's of no value to you if I don't share my opinion, right? That's what you're hiring me for, is my opinion, to say what I think is going to look good or not look good. So my clients always have fun ideas of what they think, might be really awesome. But one of the things that how my brain functions is I am able to see the full picture end result.
Right.
And a lot of people, they just, they can't think that way. They know what they like, they know what, what they see, but they can't see the end final project said and done right in their head. And so, they offer suggestions, and I kindly and respectfully say, no, I don't think that's going to look so great.
So Adrian, we were having this conversation the other day about like, do you give someone 50 options, or
No.
no, you do corral not. Them and like give us that little like that insight into how you do that, because otherwise it's paralysis analysis, right? Versus like,
I can only imagine even picking out like a trim piece, I would be like,
right.
There's cost to factor into, and there's what is that material like when you get it out on the object. And I just think there's a lot of value in that. I mean, if you've ever tried to design out a project, there's just options, especially these days, there's just options. Everything you could want is there, but is it worth it? Is it worth twice the price for one extra little, I don't know, detail or something? And that's where I think it's really interesting. You got the knowledge and the experience. It's not just an opinion, it's an educated and highly experienced opinion. And that's what we need. That's what we want in everything. It feels good when you're doing something, you understand the subject. It actually feels good. You literally get a little dose of dopamine when you do something that you know very well, right? So that's why I think it's fun to work with someone like you, because you've got a better idea of how to compress all that data down to what I'm actually asking for.
Yeah. And it's funny because, people think, oh, well, designers, they just, they say this is how it should be, the end. Yeah. And I mean,
in school, they taught me this is the right way.
Right. Exactly. And that's definitely not how I work with my clients. I like to present a design to them and without a million options. And I get a feel of what they like first. And so I let them bombard me with all the pictures from Pinterest and Google and whatever magazine they find. Bombard me with all the pictures. Absolutely. Because then I have a feeling of what it is you like, even if you don't know your design style, right? They can't label it, they can't name it. They can send me all the things, I can look at it, and then I get a feeling for it. And then I like to present them with something that fits what they like. And then what oftentimes happens is sometimes I'll get, a client who questions something or says, no, I don't like that. And then I get to explain my reasoning behind. Right. So I get to dissect it and say, this is why I'm choosing to do this way. This is my thought process. This is why I selected this. And usually, not that I'm trying to coerce or convince my client, I'm just educating them on my process. Usually what ends up happening is at the end of that conversation, they say, okay, that makes sense. I totally understand that. Yes, that's good. Let's go that direction. And sometimes, they still hate it and we move on to something else, right? We move a different direction. But oftentimes clients just need to know why I'm doing what I'm doing, or what the reasoning behind it is, or, what the process is. And when I'm able to explain that to them, then they get this sense of, okay, that makes sense. I'm tracking with you. I understand, why you're making those decisions, and let's do it. So
it's awesome. It's like that buy-in. I mean, frankly, across any, especially high stake service industry, right? It's buy-in, which really what that represents is the trust. That level of trust of like, oh, okay. I know in my head that Jen does this every day, all day, every day, and is the expert, but I still have my opinions, but they have to give over like some of that control or trust, in the sense of like, oh, this is why she's the expert. I don't have to be, instead of them trying to be the expert and put the wrong kind of floors in and then have to pay for it twice.
Yeah. And a lot of what I do is peace of mind. It's okay, I think we like this, but we don't really know, if this is good or not. And then if I'm able to come in and, redirect them or say, yes, that's a great decision, then it gives them that peace of mind of, okay, we're headed on the right track. We know this is going to be good, and a lot of times I tell clients, like, just send me all the things and I can say yes or no. Yeah, I like that. No, I don't think that's going to work because of X, Y, and Z. And it just gives them peace of mind in making decisions, because there's so many decisions, so many details that are involved in the remodel process, down to little minuscule things that you don't even know exist until you're in the remodel process. And you're like, what's a schluter? I don't even know what that is. And,
What is a schluter?
Exactly. So it's just, there's so many details that homeowners don't even realize are there until they get into the project. And that's what I'm there for, is to help them navigate all of that.
So before we move to step 2, which is the team of trusted contractors and, a craftsman and so on, would you tell our audience what a schluter is?
So there's this little piece of basically trim that goes around your tiling. So if you're tiling a bathroom and you have your little niche pockets where you're going to put your shampoo and your razor and stuff like that in there, and the edge, when you have an exposed tile, it's not pretty on the side, right? And so that schluter piece, and there's all sorts of finishes and colors and sizes that you can choose from.
There's a world of schluters available for you.
There's a world of schluters, yes, that you need to select that will go with your tile, right? And so I was working on one project, and the contractors, they will just select whatever they think, whatever they think goes. And not every contractor has a great design eye. And so I went into this one project. Yeah. And the client's like, I didn't even know this was something that needed to be selected, so they put this black schluter on this white tile, and that can look good in some cases if you're doing high contrast black and white, but everything in this bathroom is white. And then you have this glaring black piece of trim. Yeah. And she's like, I wouldn't have chose that. Well, she wasn't even asked by the contractor, right? And so it's just those little details.
That seems like fun to replace too, I imagine, once it's all glued into place.
Yeah. By the way, we're going to tear out your brand new shower.
Yeah, for real.
And hopefully not break all the tiles, which you can't get anymore, or at least that match.
Yeah, and this is not like sending the salad back. Like, this is a pretty hard ask when you call them, hey, by the way, can you redo almost everything for me?
Yeah.
Gotcha. And by the way, he probably used the schluter that he happened to have on the truck,
right?
Because he used it in his previous job,
the leftovers,
and it cost him no money. So,
yes,
which this is working with contractors. Yes, that's a very pragmatic choice.
Yeah,
but our contractors know that they better run that by Jenn first.
Right, exactly. So. And I like to tell my clients too, I'm your biggest advocate. When it comes to working with your contractors, they're there to do the work. And I'm there to advocate for you to make sure that the work is being done the way that we want it, right? To the quality, to the standards, and a lot of times clients, they might not have, the voice or the understanding to know that you can tell your contractor, like, no, that's not okay, or you didn't do that right, or and
you actually know what you're asking of them, and you've got the relationship. I gotta say too, this tile person knows, okay, well, that's Jen's gonna hire me for the next tile project.
Yes,
if we can make sure that this one goes well. If you're just talking to a contractor and they botch something, you're maybe you're a Yelp reviewer or whatever, and that's it. They'll never hear from you again. So this branching circle of trust that you have is kind of an important concept here.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. So going to the big step 2, which is really that 90%, which is the project management and bringing in all of the people. And granted, we could lay all this out. You got to go get bids. You got to figure out the right project. project for the right contractor. There's the concept of good, fast, cheap when you're in the service industry, which is, contracting also. Pick two.
Yep.
You don't
Yeah.
get three. Sorry, good, fast, cheap. All three does not exist, especially in today's market. But there's all these concepts. But I think the core of that project management is when they hire you, and say it's 500 to a big project, might be $10,000 to hire a designer and project manager. But what happens is, and generally speaking, it's not that expensive, but for the stuff that we do. But there's this concept of people don't necessarily want to hire the designer, but they'll hire a project manager. And we've talked about this. And in the Delavan contracting services, and as it incorporates with Studio Red and all the design work that you do, there's this concept of, okay, well, we can bill for project management and people don't have a problem with that. But there's just that, designer. And it goes back to the initial part of the conversation is, that's just a luxury. We don't need it.
Yes.
But when you bring in a contractor, the right contractor for that job, you were just telling me, I don't know, in the last couple of days about a new painting contractor that you've used a few times now, and they're just as good, in fact, maybe a little bit better than one of the other contractors that we've used for quite some time. And their prices are similar, and their response is good. So it's like, whoa, okay, we might have just shuffled the deck and put, that card over the next one. And you're always doing that because you have, a dozen jobs going on at any given point. And, John Q homeowner, they have one house, one job.
Yeah.
So there's this leverage, this relationship. There's a ton of moving parts here, but there's incredible value. You might save thousands of dollars typically on $100,000 job. You might save $10,000, $15,000 because you're using the people that you have the relationships with on the front end. And then on the back end, the job still gets done correctly.
Right.
So like it's not just one like, oh, great, you renovated my house.
Yeah.
It's, you hired a professional start to finish to do this a huge job. And there's 100 different inputs that are hinge points that can add value.
Right.
So, and I don't know, and it's relationships, it's advocating, it's actually knowing things that look good.
Right.
Yeah. It becomes
I don't know. I always joke.
I think.
Can you look at 50 colors of gray? I can't. I know you can, Jen, but 50 colors of gray and say 50 shades of gray, if you will, right? For the readers in the audience. Can you say, use number 12 or use number 27? You can, and you'll give the client two options.
Yes.
I'll look at it and I'll be like, I don't know.
Plus then you got finish, there's mats and there's satins and there's everything in between. And
so
it's the layers.
There's reasoning.
As you start chewing into a project like that, it's like, oh man, there's 6 more options, and they're not like separate, they're like a layer. Oh, and then what brand do you buy? And then, oh man, it's just, there's so many choices that go into it than just, so I love it. I love that you kind of condense it down into, it seems like the client can kind of take on what they want to. If they insist on one thing, you can design around such a thing. Or if they love, Rob, we talked about this with another project, that idea of like, I love this super unique cerulean blue, insane, unique, well, don't paint your whole house that color. But people will. And that sounds silly when I'm using an example like that, but there's a lot of in-between examples that are just a bit off the shade or whatever that, make your house, that don't look right with the greenery around your house or whatever the houses next to you look like. Or, that whole idea that a color can look different depending on what color you put it next to is still like, my brain just spins trying to understand. You put a tile of color on something light brown or white and it just literally changes shades 100%. So it's like, it's not even, like you're saying, which shade is the right shade? It just depends on what you're putting it next to. It's got to work with everything else. Is brilliant.
So
and really at the end of the day, I mean, the goal is to give my clients a home that they love, right? But that, like we were talking about before, eventually, maybe not right away or whatever, that's still going to have hold resale value, right? We want to be smart. We want to do smart design. But also give the client what they want. And so it's that balance, and it's that give and take, and it's that compromise that is all a part of the process and the relationship between me and the client.
And to throw a wrench in there, then you also have to do it in a way that fits within a certain budget.
Yeah.
Easy.
That's the best part.
And so, I know that I'm probably one of the more obnoxious clients that you have, because of course
I've worked with worse. It's okay.
Oh, thanks.
There's always someone worse.
That's so nice of you to say, Jen. But what happens is the more somebody is in a certain industry that maybe has a little bit of crossover, like in, because of course I'm looking at it like all I care about is value, right? And then I have my wife saying, but I like this, and I like this, and I'm like this, and I'm just like dollars. Right? So, I mean, you really have to be that psychologist or therapist, I should say.
Yes.
There's that balance. And it puts you in a position that for someone who's not able or willing or has the experience to tackle that tough situation gracefully.
Yeah.
It could really lead to the referral off to the marriage counselor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I often joke my second degree is in family and marriage counseling, because you're dealing with couples, and remodels are stressful. So you have that heightened stress. I've been in the middle of a number of arguments between husband and wife, and it's just a part of the process, really.
Right.
And so I should probably read some more books on marriage and family counseling.
Well, I know firsthand that you're actually very talented in that area too. So,
well, thank you.
It's in figuring out how to have us not, tear each other's hair out, right?
Yeah.
So to sum up, and with somewhat of a level of brevity to not carry on forever, we're looking at, I would say the value, you're probably 2 to 5 times worth what you charge.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Give or take?
Sure.
Project to project.
I mean,
it depends on the people who are doing it, maybe, but.
Right. It is of huge value. All my clients, after working with them, they are so thankful for having me along in the process, because they get to those points where there's so many questions, and they're like, wow, Jen, what would I have done without you here helping guide me and direct me through all of these decisions? I don't even know, and so there is huge value. And along with saving money by avoiding mistakes, avoiding redoing things, making sure you're selecting, things cost effectively in the right areas, all of that saves you money. But, time is money, and peace of mind of, the less stress and knowing the project's being done right. I mean, all of that is of huge value to my clients.
Yeah. Right. Especially we've got, the do-it-yourselfer stuff is very popular right now. You find a YouTube video to do everything, but and I assume you work with people who want to do some of the stuff themselves, right? I mean, it's not about hitting up the contractor. It's about reviewing the project and making sure, you've got all your boxes checked. But, I'm sure our listeners kind of tune into this thinking maybe we'll get some specific advice, but really, truly, the big picture here is hire a designer. That's it. It's funny how often the advice that Rob and I have here is pay money to this specific thing, but it's about how you direct those funds and making sure that the money is working for you in the most absolute manner. Right. And Rob, we had that example of that house. That was a costly mistake, and they saved money by not having a designer, right? They saved, I'm using air quotes here for those who are listening, saved money by not hiring someone to help them make this decision, but they didn't in the real terms of like net profitability of that, because they did plan to sell the house. And when they did, they lost money on that decision. So Jen, can you leave us with any big like oopsies, or hey, avoid this if you can, or where's the best bang for buck, in a general, if a house is all out of date, where do you throw some cash?
Oh, well, I mean, your bare bones is where you got to start. If something is just completely outdated and crazy, you got to do the walls, you got to do the floors, you got to do the basics for sure. Definitely first.
So flooring and paint, right?
Yes. I mean, I would love to rip out. I would love to rip out every kitchen, but that's not always doable.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and here's the thing: a paint consult, a color consult. I mean, we're talking, a couple $100.
Oh yeah.
And versus especially those DIYers that are spending every weekend painting an entire house, which is not that uncommon. And they get halfway through and they're like, oh, I hate it. It looks just awful.
In ways you can't understand. I remember when I was younger, my brother painted his room red, and it seemed really cool when he picked it out at the store. But in the hallway, it looked like the murder room. You get in the hallway and there's glowing reds pouring out into the hall. And it was like, oh, wow, that even has an impact on other spaces. It's spilling, the color is spilling out. You can't just have some Harlequin house where, there's this different shades everywhere, but people do that all the time with the best intentions, because they have, well, that's tonal match my TP or whatever it is that's important. My couch is brown, so I'll get this wall color. And then they forget that their kitchen's over there right next to it. All these open concept houses that we have now. So
awesome.
It's just so important to have someone like you on your side.
So I got to take back the red paint.
It affects you mentally too. People
yeah.
don't realize.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, why do I feel so anxious?
Because I think somebody's going to come into my room and murder me. Well, let's leave it there. Thank you, Jen, for
thank you.
Just giving us little spoonfuls of your wisdom. I need it personally.
Same.
And hopefully this was valuable for our audience. Make good choices, people. Make good choices.
Make good choices, lean on expertise and knowledge when you can. And Jen, I hope some of our audience has the pleasure of working with you, but you've done a great job of explaining your value, I think. So thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll catch you next time on the Get Rich Slow podcast. Catch you next week.